Welcome to the Boom Clap Podcast, where culture and conviction collide. I'm Rita Rogers.
And I'm Cecily Dickey.
And this is our anniversary episode. It's been 4 years. I can't believe it.
I can't either. 4 years is a long time.
It is.
Yep.
It's a long time to stick with podcasting specifically because I didn't look up any statistics. I probably should have done that, but I'm just thinking of it now. But in starting podcasting and talking to other people who podcast, like bouncing some ideas off of them, which we really didn't do until like maybe a year or two in. But we found a lot of podcasters just quit really quickly. So I feel like it's a long time to stick with podcasting.
I know. It's weird because I feel like new at it still. You know, I feel like we don't know what we're doing. In some ways, I feel like we really have learned so much, but it's just such a weird thing to be like, in podcasting years, we're pretty old. But I just feel like I'm still so new. There's
so much to learn. Like, I mean, we're still asking people questions like, what platform are you using? Do you have the same technical difficulties? And listening to a podcast, sending it to each other and being like, listen to all these technical difficulties they had. And they're a huge podcast. It's everyone, you know? Anyway, young and old at the same time. That's where we're at. But you guys sent in your questions. Traditionally, I think for the last 3 years, we've done a Q&A, we call it, episode where we share answers and opinions to the questions you submitted to us. And I'm really excited to record today.
Me too.
I love this kind of episode. We should probably do it more than once a year because it's fun. So, I don't know. I don't really have anything to say other than we really appreciate you listeners. We wouldn't be here without you. We appreciate your encouragement that you send to us either via reviews or emails or messages on social media. We appreciate your shares of the things that we share on social media, sharing the podcast with your friends. Like, we're just very thankful for you guys.
It's really the only reason that we are here 4 years later.
Yeah.
Like, if there was no interest from you guys or you didn't give us anything back, you know, as far as feedback and your continued listens, like, we have listeners who have literally been listening since the very first episode. So that's really the only reason we're still here. We're so thankful.
Yeah, it's what keeps us going. Like, not to say that we don't enjoy doing this. We do enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable thing to do, to talk to really interesting people, to discuss important things going on in the world just with each other and then with you guys. But like, to be quite honest, there's been times where we've discussed pulling back or completely stopping, or like, we need to see by this time next year where things are at and just like rehash things. And like, this has happened multiple times and for many reasons. Like, one being we're both moms and we take that priority very seriously. And so having to sit down some things with our kids or, you know, prioritize the podcast occasionally is hard for us because of taking the motherhood priority so seriously. But anyways, all that to say, your encouragement really means a lot and your continued listenership means a lot. It keeps us going.
And just the way that you guys are, the way that our listeners are, has allowed us to have this perspective of the podcast that no matter what happens with it or how successful it may or may not be, because it is successful, but you know, that's not what drives us anymore. It's just really being there for you guys and with you guys. That's our perspective now, and enjoying that we get to do this for you and with you. Yeah.
Yep. And I guess a thank you to the people who support us, like Andy. Thank you for editing. Yeah. That's been huge for us. Casey, who's helping us with social media, but now like that's been huge for us and helpful. Just releasing a little bit of responsibility on pulling quotes and things. And then our husbands obviously help a lot with encouragement. And then those of us that, you know, those friends of ours in real life that actually listen to our podcast. I have one friend who she listens to the podcast weekly. She texts me encouragement occasionally. And you don't have a lot of that. Like, when you do things like this in real life, the friends that you have in real life, I should say, aren't always super supportive. I think that that's a thing. And so to have a friend that is, or, that's really big. So I just appreciate everyone that supports us. I don't know. I feel something different this year. Like I don't normally feel this attached to an anniversary, but I feel a bit more attached this year. So,
well, I think it's just like with anything, the older you get, the more you mature and the more your thinking changes. Right. And I think it's the same with when you do something like this has been like a baby for us, and it's growing up. And the way we think about it changes. It's just, it's a natural thing.
True. All right. Do you want to get into questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So, I had this page pulled up first, but it's got a few for me on the top. So I'm going to switch up the page here. All right. So first one just acknowledges how crazy it is that it's been 4 years. And we agree. This question is one I'm particularly excited to answer. And I think it's a really good question. It says, what have you two learned about each other in the past 4 years?
I call dibs on you going first.
Okay. I'm glad to, but it's going to sound like I can only think of bad things first that we've learned about each other. Okay. I think Cecily has learned about me that I am very particular and I am very slow and meticulous to a fault. And I think that on the flip side of that same thing I've learned about Cecily, she's trigger happy. Like if she gets an idea, she's like, boom, done.
Yep. Like, it's done. Oh, you didn't want that? Oh, it's too bad. It's done.
And also has a very poor memory.
I'm thinking
say that because it's not like you can't remember. You remember like things you learn about.
Right.
But like details. Or
I don't care for details. Yeah.
I don't remember interviewing that person or like that. I'm like, wait, what? But the thing is, okay, both of these things sound bad, maybe on face value, but these things have both helped us as well. Like, if we were both like me, it would be really, really bad. And if we both
probably
trigger happy, it would be really, really bad. So we have balanced each other really well in that way.
Yes. Okay. My eyes are watering, guys. It's not because I'm crying. I think I have some sort of allergic reaction going on. So if you see tears start coming, just know they're just watering. So anyway, it's the video now. If we didn't have video, I wouldn't even have to mention these things, but now I do. Anyway, I 100% agree with what Rita said. The things that I hadn't written down any responses to any of these questions.
No, I haven't either.
Except for this one, because I have a bad memory. So I didn't want to get into this and panic.
You're validating me at least.
I know. No, honestly, when you were describing my forgetfulness, I think of that little fish, Dory, from Finding Nemo, Dory. That's kind of like me. But yes, that's what I had written down for Rita, is that you're extremely creative, like so creative, but very methodical and careful is the way I put it, like extremely, which is good because it does balance me, who's more like, what's the worst that could happen? Let's just go for it. That's definitely the way I live life and do things. So it's been interesting. And the other, we need each other, I think, to both soften and harden us. You know what I mean? And I think if Rita was doing the podcast on her own, it might not be going anymore just because of...
Well, it might be going. It just would be like, I'm going to do that someday.
Yeah, exactly. And if I was doing the podcast on my own, I probably would have stopped and switched to something else by now. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yes. So the fact that we have each other was God ordained because we balance each other well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're really similar in some ways. But another thing I wrote down about Rita is that she really loves people, and also just enjoys hosting people and being around people and like going. I'm thinking of one conversation in particular right now where you talked about going to like the county fair where you grew up and you just love running into all these people. And I'm just thinking like, that's my nightmare. So not that I don't like it. It's fine once I'm there, but like the build up to it and thinking about doing it is hard for me. So Rita is extroverted and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, we were talking about that. And I think we were talking the other day just about how, like, I like people to a fault that it's like, I'm sitting in a conversation. I'm like, I don't think this person likes me. And so I'm just like trying to figure out how to make them know that, like, I'm not a snob, or like, I'm not. And I think I don't think it's that they don't like me. They think like maybe I'm a snob or something. And I'm like, how do I make them realize, like, I'm just really like,
likable?
I don't know.
How do I make them like me?
Love you, like want to be friends with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like such a weirdo.
Yeah.
And then I get home. Like, I don't know why that particular day I was so honed in on it when I was talking to you about it, because like normally I don't realize how much I'm like that. But I got home like, why am I like that? I spent a lot of time at that event in my head, like just trying to make that one person realize, like, I'm a really nice person, and I like just really want to like you, and you like me. And that's a problem.
But see, this is what we learn about each other, things like this. Whereas if I was at an event or something like this similar to you, and I felt like someone didn't like me, I'd be like, okay, I'll go. Yeah. It just like wouldn't even faze me. I'd just be like, move on. Yeah. So
something also about you is you're a really good musician. Like this is a very different thing, very different sides of the coin, I guess we're on. Like, I am a horrible singer. At church, like, I will try to make myself quiet if there's somebody sitting directly in front of me, which I have the luxury of not always having someone sit in front of me because we go to a very small church. But also that's like a hindrance because there's not as many singers to drown out your bad voice. But you, on the other hand, are really a beautiful singer. And if people don't know that about you, like, I love that. And you've shared some of your music with me that you've done with your daughter and things. And I always think it's so pretty. But one thing Cecily helped me with this past year, I did a reel for Boron, and it wouldn't let me post the music because it was like copyrighted, and I didn't realize that. And Cecily, like the next day, like just made the music for me. And so I could use it. And it was so awesome. And it made it even more special. And anyway, she's really good at things like that. And I think it's so neat because it's something I cannot do.
That's always what gets me the most about people too. When I think about other people, I'm most amazed by the things they can do that are completely outside my skill set. But back to the musician thing, it's so kind of you to say. And this is where I don't find I am that good of a musician. And people might think like, oh, she's just saying that. But no, I really think that. And it's because, I'm surrounded by other very talented musicians. And so it changes your perception of like what you think you're capable of. Anyway, but that's very sweet of you. But that's what I find so intriguing, like about your creativity and stuff, because I'm creative in certain ways, like I think with writing and with music. But when it comes to like the little details or making things look beautiful, like it just comes so naturally to you. And there's things that I've made that I'll send them to you, be like, is this okay? And you'd be like, do you not see the problems with this? I'd be like, oh, no, I did not. So same thing with my kids. Like when I see them do things that I can't do, I'm like, that's amazing. Yeah. I love that. I love seeing that in anybody, the things that they're so good at.
Yeah. And just being a good friend too, like for not meeting each other, like you're a really good listener, really good friend. And I just appreciate that. So really glad we're podcasting together.
Me too.
Okay. Well, on the line of being creative, I'll go to this question next. So I post pictures of my kids' birthday cakes a lot and little videos of me making birthday cakes. And somebody asked how I learned to make and decorate birthday cakes, trial and error or a class. And I don't think, like Cecily was saying, I don't think they're that particularly beautiful, but they're made with love and they do taste really good. But just trial and error. I grew up like my mom, my grandma, they made things homemade and I just watched them make things homemade. And I don't know. I just feel like things like that, if I want to do it, like I can put my mind to it and do it. I just never think like, oh, I can't make a cake. Yeah, it just seems like something simple that anybody could do to me. So,
which reminds me though of another talent you have, sewing, like the homemade Halloween costumes and stuff that you make.
My mom taught me how to sew. 4-H, 10 years of 4-H. Get your kids in 4-H.
Truly,
you still have to teach them. 4-H doesn't teach them.
Oh,
You're teaching them.
Well,
it just gives you motivation to teach them.
Right. Yeah.
Because you got a deadline.
Yeah. Oh, the deadlines.
That's what I need in my life. I need man-made deadlines.
Yes.
So I do things.
But I mean, let's not pretend that the 4-H deadlines and getting the costumes done isn't kind of stressful too.
Oh, yeah.
It's stressful. But you do such a good job. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, okay. Thoughts on the Illinois homeschool law situation? I should have pulled up the bill number, HB 2827. Is that right?
I don't know.
I'll look it up in a little bit, and chime back in later in the podcast, but it's horrible. So right now in the United States, every state has individual homeschool laws. We'll have had an episode out with Will Estrada from HSLDA before this episode airs that you guys can go back and listen to, that does not cover this particular law because it was, it went to committee and was put forth after we recorded with Will. However, he is covering it on HSLDA's Instagram page and things because he is the attorney that is linked up with Illinois. So he's very knowledgeable with that. But we do talk about the things in this bill without knowing this bill was coming at the time on the podcast. So go back and listen to that one. But basically, this is a bill to create a registration within Illinois so that you have to register with a public school to homeschool your children. If you want to participate in any sports, which not every school allows you to do, or participate in any school activities at the public school, you have to show a vaccination record. Additionally, what Will Estrada said that could be attached to this bill are a portfolio. Well, this is not could be. This is attached. A portfolio you will have to have showing all the work your kids are doing at home. But the superintendent or an appointed public school official could be coming into your home unannounced whenever they want to see what you're doing.
Oh my goodness.
To check up on you. And if people don't, maybe we can link this in the show notes. One thing I've been sending to my state senator, state representative, people on the committee is an article from HSLDA that lined out like why homeschool regulation is bad. Because I think a lot of people may have some basic understanding, like this isn't really a good thing for homeschoolers, but have a hard time articulating why. And so I'm going to find that and we'll put that in the show notes. But basically, like creating red tape creates a situation where someone could, you are held accountable if you do not turn in the paperwork and submit to that red tape. And so there have been people who just simply forget a deadline, homeschool wise, and they're now stuck in 2-3 years of litigation or having their kids removed, things like this, simply because they forget paperwork. It creates criminals out of someone who is not a criminal, just maybe forgetful. And it also basically puts a burden of proof upon the parents when the public schools are not held to the same standard. Like all of these things are being done in the name of safety of kids, good education for the kids. But here in Illinois, kids are passed along every day who are not meeting the standards.
Absolutely. Here too.
They are not necessarily kept safe in the schools. It's not doing what they're already not doing that in public schools. So how are they going to hold homeschoolers accountable? Basically, that's my thoughts in a nutshell.
I have nothing to follow up on. Yeah.
Okay. You look like you're going to say something. I wasn't sure. Okay. How do you guys decide which guest you want to schedule? It's a very intricate process. No, I'm just kidding.
It is a process though. Like usually
is.
It's like we'll have some idea in mind of like, oh, that would be a great episode. And sometimes we'll try to search someone out to match that idea. Other times we'll come across someone who's done or said or written or, something interesting or had an interesting life. And we're like, that would be a great person. And so then what we'll do is we will message each other back and forth about it a lot. and then often forget to ask the person on. And so this is something we're trying to refine right now so that that doesn't happen as often. Yeah. There have been other times where like, oh, this would be a great person to have on. And we get to the point of like almost asking them. And then all of a sudden we'll come across something that we're like, ooh, maybe not. So we try to be careful about who we have on, not saying that like we need the people that come on to be people we agree with on everything, because if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that that's just not the case. We have lots of people on that we don't fully agree with. But if there's like super big red flags, we don't necessarily want to have them on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know the things you don't agree with someone on though, before you have them on, or to some extent. I think there's a fine line between like having someone on who you want, like knowing you want to talk to him about this. You may not agree on everything, and being able to acknowledge that. Because sometimes when you have somebody on, it comes across that you're promoting them as a person rather than the topic they're providing on. And so, especially when we're having someone speak to things within the realm of Christianity and faith and things,
that's where we're most careful.
It's so hard because like you don't want to have someone on that you're pushing your listeners out to follow if they aren't solid. So that's a hard one.
Yeah. That's where we're most careful because of that. But if you guys ever have guest suggestions, send them our way, because we appreciate that. Because not that it's hard to think of guests, but sometimes it is, you know, like you're like, who else could we talk to?
And it's one of those things where we have like tons of guests in mind. And then like 1 week we'll be like, who should we have on?
Yes. So yeah. And we're 170 some episodes in now. So you can imagine like we've tapped a lot of people already. So if you ever have ideas for topics and especially guests, please send them our way. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. 2 nursing questions. Do you ever think you will go back to work as a nurse, and do you miss nursing and she says the helping patients part? I mean, I don't know. I'm maintaining my license. I very much enjoyed critical care in like specifically hemodynamics, running ECMO, all of those things, like very much enjoyed that. We live in the middle of nowhere. That's the thing. So the hospital I worked at is essentially the only hospital within a decent driving, like that was an hour door to door. That's the closest hospital to do something like that. The next closest hospital would be Indianapolis, which is like 2 hours. So ideally, maybe eventually I would find like a job where I could kind of just work as needed, like running ECMO or something for a perfusion service. I don't know. Like I would love to do something like that. I've been having the itch a lot lately, but it's been 3 years, just over 3 years since I worked at the bedside, and I do really miss it, but I love being home with my kids, and I don't want to be away from my kids for, 24 hours at a time. And that's kind of what it would require. And I don't know. There's other things I liked about nursing. I like palliative and all that stuff, but I don't know. I have a passion still for it. And I love like when my friends call and they need help, like diagnosing someone, which I do more often than you would guess. I enjoy that. I love digging for the solution, and I don't know, it's fun. But I do want to say one thing. I thought of this a second ago. Do you miss nursing the helping patients part? I mean, did I ever tell you about this, Cecily, when my middle child, my second daughter, when she was like 3, she thought, I didn't know this, but eventually I learned that she thought when I was going to work to be a nurse, I was nursing babies at work.
That's hilarious.
I was going to work and nursing other people's babies.
Oh my goodness. Just 12 hours straight. 12 hours straight.
And so we had for Nurses Week one year, this is hilarious. We had for Nurses Week one year, a video contest. I don't know why the hospital did this, but it was a video contest. And we had one nurse. He was amazing at like making video, super creative, like good singer, just like one of those creative people. And we made this whole video to that song is Alien Ant Farm song. you're okay. You're okay. Like, do you know that song?
No.
Anyway, okay. I'm not going to sing it because I'm really bad. But anyway,
that sounded beautiful.
This whole video, we had this huge bear and we like ran down slow-mo with the crash cart. We're defibrillating it. And like,
I feel like I've seen this video. Is that possible?
Yes. He took it down. So it's not accessible anymore, but I'm pretty sure I sent it to you at one time because this is like probably 6 years ago. And anyway, there's one part where I'm like holding a bottle, like feeding this bear. And like, anyway, the hospital ended up not having the competition for some reason after they announced this competition. So it was just for fun on our unit, but it was great.
That is fun.
And then I can't remember if it was a separate video or the same video, but we all like sent in our kids saying things about what we thought our parents did at work.
That's
and
funny.
It was so cute. Like some of the kids were like, my mom or my dad helps people, but sometimes they die. And then like my kids said, my middle said, my mom goes to work and nurses babies. Okay. Sorry, that was a total aside, but that's a funny story.
That is funny. That is funny.
Okay. Can you talk more about limiting social media and gaining more joy and positivity?
I mean, I wouldn't say that those two have to be connected. You know, like in this question, it's almost like because of social media, I don't have joy. And what was the other one?
Yeah.
What was the other? Joy and
positivity.
So I feel like they're definitely linked, but to say that they're always is like a false, equivalence. It's not necessarily true, but if you're finding it's true for you, then, I would just cut social media out completely. But that's me, just like rip that Band-Aid right off and just say goodbye to that. Unless you really need it for your job or something, but then maybe there's other like solutions that you could have someone do it for you or something. But for me, I wouldn't say social media steals my joy, but I don't enjoy it. And I've always been wanting that to change, but I just don't know that it will. So I don't know. What do you think, Rita?
I just think it takes up a part of my brain if I'm on it. It doesn't take up a part of my brain if I'm on it as a user, but as a creator. I think that's part that people don't understand necessarily if they aren't creating content. Being on social media or even doing the podcast and creating content for people means I'm constantly thinking about the issues that I want to talk about and ideas, and I become absent-minded. And like I would be like this without it a little bit too. But like my kids will be like, Mom, like talking to me sometimes, and I've like got this whole idea going in my head. Yeah. And they can tell like I'm not really paying attention because I'm like running this background scenario in my head. Like this is just how I am. Like I said, without social media or podcasting, I would do it as well. But when I'm on social media a lot creating, it's much worse. And so I have personally made myself take a few days off because social media for me is a bit of a job. And it is not normal to live at your job 24 hours a day.
Right.
And so I don't know how these moms who have multiple children or homeschooling their kids are also at their job 24 hours a day, constantly logging into social media, putting up stories, etc., and still being present at home. And if they're doing that, great, good for them.
Their brain must work in a different way too, right? Like,
yeah, potentially
compartmentalized, maybe better,
Yeah, that's absolutely potential. But there's part of me that feels that that's a bit impossible, and it just makes me a little bit sad because I think that there's the expectation from the user for people to be constantly present and talking about things. But also from the creator, like there's this pressure. And I've just sort of like relinquished the pressure. It's like, I'm going to do this after my kids go to bed. Not the most ideal time of the day. The best time of the day would be to post probably in the afternoon, but it's better than nothing. And it's the time of day I have away from my kid. Like this is how my brain is working now. And it's been much more helpful for my joy and positivity and productivity simply because I feel a lot more joy when I'm able to be prioritizing the things in the correct order.
Yeah. So I guess for anyone who's wondering the same thing, because I do feel like it's a common question, first answer the question, are you a creator? Like business owner or someone that has to be on social media in that context? Or are you just a consumer? Because if you are just a consumer and you're finding that it's having an impact on you, it's really easy to pull that plug. And I guarantee you that once you do, you'll probably feel better almost immediately. And then, if you're a creator, you just might have to get creative with how you're doing it.
Yeah, set limits.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What is the topic or person you had on that you learned the most new information from?
I'm curious what you're going to say, but and here's where my details go bad too, but the brain death conversation we had, I can't remember the lady's name.
Heidi Klessig.
Yes, Heidi Klessig. I feel like that one, we learned a lot, and I feel like our listeners probably did too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that that one in particular. There was another question that kind of linked up with that.
Did you change your mind on?
Yeah, something about like, did you change your mind on an interview? And I would say that like her books and her interview challenged me more than anyone we've ever interviewed. Like,
I would agree.
It wasn't like I hadn't questioned things about it, but it's like still to this day, I'm like, I have such a hard time like flipping the switch in my head because I'm like, I totally see what she's saying about brain death, and we'll link this show in the show notes if you didn't listen to it, because you have to listen to this one, especially if you work in healthcare. You've got to listen. But it's like I constantly like forget. I'm like, wait, so this person is still going like in some instances. Sorry, let me back up here. So in some instances, like, brain death is never a thing. Like, that's not real. We learned that. Like, it's not brain death. It's like, okay, the brain has failed in some ways, but it's not total death in almost every case. The brain still had some capacity. But yes, in many of these cases, this patient is still going to die if you remove life support. So it's like, what's wrong then with taking their organs? Okay. But like, I keep coming back to like, the person is not physiologically dead. And so you're like, by taking the organs, that is what is killing them. So if we agree about what death is and when death happens, which everybody seems to, other than in the legal sense for the act of harvesting organs, like there's only one right answer. And it's just like, wow, it weighs on me still, like thinking about that.
I know. Yeah. I think what we said in that episode is a paradigm shifter. And it was
totally.
Yeah,
totally. So I would say that's the main one for me.
Me
just
too.
like you, Cecily.
My name is Emmy, and I'm Cecily's daughter. I want to tell you all about World Watch News. World Watch News is a 10-minute program that is on every weekday. This is a trustworthy source for current events for kids and teens that is biblically sound. It helps kids like me become critical thinkers who know what's happening in the world. I love watching it every morning with my family, and I think you will too. Click the link in the description and use the code BOOMCLAP25 for a 90-day free trial. You've got nothing to lose.
This one just says, I love how you guys critically think and bring it back to our values as Christians, which thank you so much. That is the goal.
That's the goal. Yeah.
That is the goal. Okay, top things you've learned and implemented or learned and changed mindset on.
That's a tough one. Because I know the right answer would be to say that I have, but I don't know that I've really changed my mindset on anything. I might have firmed up my mindset on certain things. Again, the best example of changing my mindset is the Heidi Klessig episode. But unless I'm really forgetting something, I think most of the things we've learned over the past 4 years have kind of firmed up my belief system.
Yeah. I would say Andrew Pudwa, his episode, like you said, it didn't completely change my mind, but it really made me feel a lot more freedom in the way I homeschool. That was really wonderful. I'm trying to think. Oh man, maybe I'll come back to maybe I'll think of something as we record and come back to it. But yeah, I loved that episode. Andrew Pudall was amazing. And it was so off the beaten path from what people normally say, like really just flipping the funnel in high school and doing things different. So
love that.
Yeah. Okay. Homeschool, what you've learned, like, don't like, plans for the future.
Man, I feel like I've learned so much through homeschooling. It's been we're in our 7th year, I think. And the person I was when I started and the person I am now are completely different. So what have I loved about it? I've loved the freedom. I've loved having my kids with me and just being very familiar. And I know this is true for kids who have their parents in school too, but in my experience, this is what I can speak to, right? It's been very cool to be with them through some of the biggest struggles, like math and certain things that you're learning. It really causes you to struggle. And to be the person that is in the struggle and seeing how your kid handles the struggle, that's been huge for us. I wouldn't say it's always enjoyable in those moments, but I don't know. If our purpose in parenting is to help grow our kids' character, or one of the purposes of parenting is to help grow our kids' character, I feel like being the person who's witnessing their struggle and helping them through it is very valuable. What were all the things she was wondering?
Learned, liked, don't like, plans for the future.
Okay. My likes and my don't likes are basically the same thing. It just depends on what perspective I'm looking at through that day, right? Sometimes having your kids with you all the time is exhausting. Less as my kids are older. Like now they're, 13, 11, and 9. So they're not really exhausting to be with. They're kind of fun to be with. You know what I mean? But at times that was really hard. But it's also my favorite thing. So those things are kind of the same. And something I've learned that I've said before on episodes that I really, really want everyone who's starting out with younger kids to understand is just don't do too much. Don't do too much school right away. Like there's so many different ways to learn. And I think just sitting your kids in front of books and I'm talking about workbooks and curriculum right away and trying to teach them all the things, it's pointless. For my kids anyway, pretty pointless at a young age, and math especially. Just learn those basics. And I guess that's probably where the classical education stuff comes in. We didn't do classical education really, but what is the first one? It's, I'm going to out myself as someone who doesn't really know, but it's the one, what is it?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking anything. In classical education, there's 3 or 4 different stages. And the first one is just basically they're parroting back information.
Yeah.
I can't remember the word for it right now.
It's not memorization, but I know what you're talking about. And it's essentially they're coming up with rhymes and things that they're
Yeah. So they're memorizing and spitting things back out. And I really think that's what they need. And when you think about math and stuff, it's they just need to memorize those basics, whether it's through song or however they do it. And just don't start them on anything else until they have that solid. That is the biggest thing that I wish people could learn. And then, with the Andrew Pudall episode, flipping it over and being as they get older, they have more and more freedom to pursue things that they're interested in, to work, to do different things. So I don't know. This is what I wish I would have known early on. When we started homeschooling, I didn't really know many other people doing it, anyone that I was close to. And I hadn't done any research on it. It was just God said, homeschool your kids. And I said, oh, okay. And just was kind of thrown into it, and having to learn and figure these things out was probably part of God's plan. But looking back, I'm it would have been easier to know some things about different ways of homeschooling or, to have a philosophy. And all of that I have now. And so I don't know if that answers her question, but I think freedom in homeschooling is so important.
Absolutely. I started older with my kids and older as a person. So I think that
big difference.
I felt a lot of that freedom early on just because I was more set in my ways as a human being myself.
And more people had been doing it as well, right? Which I don't know if that changes the way you think about it too.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have a community around me doing it at the time other than you. My sister homeschools, but Anyway, yeah, for me, the biggest thing I learned, I'll just say, is all that I didn't learn as meshed together in school. And I will say, like, one of the first things we started out studying was ancient civilizations for history when we started homeschooling. And when you like start talking about Roman Empire, and I don't even think we really talked about a lot of ancient history in public school.
Yeah, I don't remember much.
The very brief amount that we did, there's no Jesus. And, you know, in church and things, you don't talk about the Roman Empire at all. You talk about Jesus. And so I think something that's really important and wonderful about homeschool is the fact that your kids get history as it actually happened.
Yes.
With all the parts together, not just in separate boxes.
Yeah.
And when you realize that those things are happening simultaneously, it really makes things real and
brings
more
it to life.
Yeah, brings it to life. That's a really good way of putting it. And honestly, like, sometimes I'm jealous isn't the right word because it's not what I really mean, but I'm so excited for my kids for where they're at in their education, but also their faith education at this point in their lives. And simultaneously a little sad for myself that I was so late in life picking some of these things up. So that's one thing I really learned.
Yeah.
And then plans for the future. So my oldest is going to be, quote, a high schooler next year. I know a lot of homeschoolers don't like do the grade level thing, but I don't know if she will go to college or not. Like, I don't think a degree is important from the standpoint of just life in general, unless you're going to use it. Like a lot of the stuff they're teaching you in college is just indoctrination at this point. So depending on where you go, there are some really good colleges out there. But so if she wants to go to college, we need to have a transcript and all of those things. So the other day I started looking at just some tuitions just to see, and that feeling. And then also
tuitions for university
colleges.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. And then just what they would need, you know, for a transcript. And it's so vague. Like I went to Purdue University, so I just looked that up just because that's where I went. And one of the things that says, I can't remember, is it 3 or 4 years of social studies? And I'm like, well, what's social studies? Like, we're not doing social studies. Like, I know they called history social studies kind of in school where I went, but it was more like you're studying Indiana history, but it's like you're learning about, I don't know, all the John Mellencamp and stuff like that. Like, okay, this isn't stuff that really matters. I don't know. Anyway, so we're doing like more history. And I'm like, does that even count? Like, how do you know what counts? And so I did a bit more digging, and they're like, some of the forums say, well, like psychology counts as a social study, and so does American history. It's like a very broad, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. But it's kind of daunting because like you don't have anything behind you saying this is going to count on paper. You know, you just kind of have to guess.
Well, and guessing also just like, is this even going to be something my kid's going to need?
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared kind of either way almost, right? So yeah, no, that's starting to enter my thoughts as well. And yeah, I mean, my oldest son, he has ideas of what he might want to do, but nothing firm, you know, and it's, for me, I can very much tell it's like, oh, these are just ideas. So yeah, I guess that'll be something that we can learn in the future, is kind of like figuring out how to on the go adjust to what they're needing and wanting. Yeah. So, but I'm really glad you brought up the faith part of homeschool too, because I don't know why that wasn't part of my answer. I mean, here I said like God is the only reason we're homeschooling. And then I kind of forgot to bring up the fact that, you know, what I really love about it is that I guess it doesn't compartmentalize life at all. You know, like, our faith is what drives our homeschool and what drives our family life. And all of that is one piece together. And I'm just very thankful for that. And, you know, our kids are still young. And so it's sometimes hard to talk about stuff like this because I want to believe and I'm praying for my kids to turn out really well and to have strong faith and be contributing members of society. And you just don't know. But at this point, I feel like a level of confidence in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I also feel confidence in the fact that I'm making tons of mistakes. But I feel like God has been so faithful in all of it and very thankful that it's very cohesive. Like our worldview and our purpose as a family just feels really cohesive. And I think homeschooling is a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is a very specific one. Quantum physics and in parentheses, muscle testing. Is it of God or Satan? And so she's asking because there's different types of muscle testing. So she adds quantum physics in because it's a specific way of doing it, not in the same place. And I don't know, did you look this up at all? So
I looked at the one link that you sent. I
did read it.
That
was one that very specifically described this type she was talking about. But I'm just going to throw it out there because I know some people are going to be like, know all kinds of stuff about this or have used it and probably be like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And you'd be right. I don't know much about muscle testing, but in looking it up, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of this before. I've heard of people doing it. And I think when you get into the natural wellness area anymore, or arena, there's all of these very different modalities. And like you can just keep uncovering a different way to fix this or that.
Yeah.
And muscle testing being one of them. And so I had messaged her back, like, if you don't know what muscle testing is, you guys can all look it up on your own. But basically it's using another, like the energy in the room. And then quantum physics would be energy, like not even in the same room. It would be Cecily in BC, Canada, and me sitting here and her like judging, like asking questions, and like her finger might move and it would tell her like what supplements to take or how I should eat or different things like that. And as far as being of God or Satan, I don't know for sure on that. I think it depends on like maybe how the person is going about it. But I told the girl who asked that the one thing that I will say for sure right now is that energy does exist. Yeah. Like energy exists. It's simply like people who are say it does not and are Christians and think that it does not just because they're Christians. Like you go to the hospital and you trust that they're putting electrodes on you and you're getting an EKG reading that is accurate to your heart rhythm. Yeah. You know, like energy does exist. It is real. And like we're somehow transmitting video right now. You know, like energy is real. But at the same time, like is our ability to interpret energy as a human being real? And so I told her, I'm not certain on the Satan part. Like I can't determine where that person's heart is and why they're doing it, but I would err more on the side of scam. And this is where I'm probably going to make people mad who like muscle testing.
I mean, like you said, there's different types of muscle testing too. Like, and I feel like some of it seems pretty legit.
Yes.
What this question is asking about does not seem super legit to me. And I'm on the same page as you as far as there is energy. Even like, think of things like body language, like when you're in a room with somebody, and I know body language is physical, but it's a reaction to energy in a way. And the way you perceive it is, and you can feel it. Like, you know, you've been in those moments where it's like there's tension or there's freedom or, you know, like.
But is your perception always accurate too?
Right. And this is why I leaned heavily towards the side of scam, whether you're in the same room as this person or especially if you're a country away. I just, no. I mean, I can pretty confidently say no. Yeah. And either the person who's interpreting the muscle test is completely making it up and it's a scam, or they are invested in some demonic type stuff. Like, I think it could be either or. I'm not saying it's all of Satan. I think if
that's
a person,
what I mean. Like, I think that's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Or hard to say.
If a person is doing it and is like totally innocent and naive and just, you know, they're deceived. And so someone could make an argument like if someone's deceived, that's always of Satan. And, you know, I don't know about that, but I think there's some people who probably do it with darkness in mind, but I would not say all. I just think it's a scam for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, March 2025 be the start of bird flu pandemic. Eggs are gone. Hurts so many areas. I think that's supposed to say. Well, it'll be mid-March by the time you're hearing this, so you will be able to
say for
know
yourself
if we were right or wrong. But I just don't think they're going to. I mean, I don't know what you mean by bird flu pandemic. I guess I should have clarified if they mean like coming to people and like having a pandemic scenario where things get shut down again. I don't foresee that happening right now. I think there's too many people riled up about things going on in the world and people like happy to stand their ground a little bit more. So I don't really see that happening as far as, another 2020 happening. But as far as birds being killed, yeah, I mean, that's happening.
And cattle.
Like what'd you say?
And potentially cattle.
Yeah, there were no eggs at the store the other day.
Interesting.
Not at like a Walmart scenario, but like the Amish store we go to, like there was no eggs. There was limit 2 dozen last time we went and there were no eggs. So I don't know. And they were about 50 cents an egg. I bought an 18 pack like at Walmart of the cheap eggs and they were 50 cents an egg the other day. So I guess I should have gotten chickens a while back.
Interesting. And so I haven't been buying eggs because we have chickens. And so I honestly don't even look. I don't even look like at roadside stands. I don't look in the stores for eggs. And I also haven't really been paying attention to the news, to be honest with you. And so I don't know if we're having the same issues that the US is having with eggs right now. But it's interesting. What concerns me a little bit is like our food supply series would be really great to listen to again if you're concerned about this stuff. And this is why giant, huge farms, which is what the farming world is moving to, is an issue. Because, if one place is hit with the bird flu, they kill every single bird. Or if, the bird flu has jumped to cattle, as has been happening very rarely, and you're at a large feedlot, well, then that's a lot of beef that's down the drain, So the food supply series would be a really good one to go back to if you haven't listened to it yet, or even if you have. There's a few really good episodes in there that would speak well to this, and just why your choices are very important as a consumer as well.
Yeah. One thing maybe I shouldn't. I'm trying to decide whether I say this publicly or not. Like, I don't know. This is something been rolling through my head. So they've been talking a lot about raw milk and bird flu and yada, yada. And this is something I don't know. Like, please hear me. Like, I don't know this.
Total speculation.
Yeah. I'm just like, this is how my brain works. And this is how I ask questions. And this is how I think people that make decisions should be asking questions. But bird flu, as far as I understand, and I know some people are going to listen to this and be like, flu doesn't exist. But bird flu, as I understand, is transmitted mostly by like aerosol and droplets. So like your main source of entry, or like worst source, because like when you think about getting infectious disease, there are different ways of transmission. And some of them can be transmitted multiple ways, but you will get more sick if you get it a certain way. Like, for example, we had a patient one time that got tularemia, which is like rabbit fever. And they assume like he got it from like an aerosol, like from mowing and like running over something, and like got very sick and passed away. But they were saying like, if you got it in a different way, like maybe ingesting it, like you would get sick, but not as sick as if you had aerosoled it like into your lungs. So this is where my thought process is coming in. So with bird flu, like they're saying like, I think transmission primarily that is the most detrimental would be like an aerosol or a droplet spread. But then they're saying like cows could get it, it can be detected in the milk, potentially you could ingest it. And then I think about our vaccination process and how they try to give us like some kind of like deadened or weakened virus via injection so that we can be immune to it. And I'm thinking like, wouldn't it be interesting to think about like ingestion potentially is a way to...
That is interesting.
Like introduce a less detrimental... I don't know. This is just... Do you know where I'm going with this?
But like, saying like, if that is true... then instead of, having it injected to you with all sorts of really terrible ingredients that you don't want going into your body, you're actually ingesting it with all sorts of vitamins and minerals at the same time.
And like
in raw milk. So
I would just think about it from the standpoint where they're like, kill all, or not kill all, but like all the raw milk, like that's so dangerous. But I'm like, then you inject us with viruses, like in a controlled way. Like, is this maybe a controlled? So anyway, I don't know. This is just,
it's interesting to think about.
These are questions I'm asking. This isn't an answer I have. This is a question.
Yes.
That I'm like, this is something interesting to think about.
Yeah, it is.
And I've been thinking about this for many weeks and I just need to get it out there. So, okay. This one talks about digital finance and including Wintermute. That's something you guys can look up. I think that could probably be a whole episode. I would actually like to have an episode on digital finance.
Years ago, actually, like in 2021, we were already talking about it. And I know nothing really about it. So I feel like it would be a great learning opportunity for me personally.
Yeah, that would be an episode. Okay. Have you ever had your mind change? Oh, okay. This is the other one. Having your mind change on a topic. Oh, I did think of something else along those lines. Katie Faust, we had her on. We've had her on 3 times actually, but our first episode with her was specifically on her work with them before us, IVF, surrogacy, all of those things. In adoption, we talked about adoption and how that is different. IVF isn't something I had really thought about a lot
neither.
3 or 4 years ago
so
when we
glad
had her
you thought
on.
Of this.
Yeah. And it's been a very prominent topic. And I think a lot of people are having their minds changed. And if not changed, at least seeing that there are issues arising because of this technology.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a tough one. Like it breaks my heart for my mind to be changing about it just because of the fact of how many people it impacts. Like it's a really tough one, but yeah, I'm very thankful for the work Katie is doing because I'm glad to be thinking through it a little bit more and having my perspective changed. But while my perspective is changing, there's just this awareness of, there's so many people who might listen to this or might listen to our episodes with Katie and be like, oh, my children are here because of IVF, or I'm struggling with infertility right now. And that's what we were going to do, or that's what we are doing. And we have these frozen embryos, and my heart breaks.
It's a really hard topic. Like, it's a hard topic.
And it's just hard.
And everybody's touched by it. That's one thing we even talked about in the episode. Like everyone is touched by it. Everybody knows somebody. Everybody, So the hard topic. But on those lines, did you talking about fertility and things? Did you see a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, there was a some kind of summit or meeting amongst people that do fertility research, and they say they're very close to having lab-grown sperm and lab-grown eggs.
Oh my gosh!
To let people basically design their babies.
Ooh.
With literally lab-grown sperm.
I did not see that.
Yeah. Actually meant to post about it a few weeks ago. I didn't get to it, but maybe I will. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure this was real. I looked multiple places and multiple sources. And I'm like, is this an onion or, but it's not.
Yeah. You wish it was. Or sometimes I'll see something and be like, please tell me this is the Babylon Bee.
Yeah.
Then it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically discuss anything homeopathy, or being focused with littles or homeschool. Congrats. So homeopathy, I guess we could talk about a little bit. I'm still learning quite a bit. I actually just messaged Melissa the other day with Remedy. So Cecily and I both have Remedy kits, and they have been so helpful. That's what I go to most. I have Boron at home too, and I like that to take on the go with me a little bit. But the Remedy kit I access the most. And I had messaged Melissa the other day because I had this breakout by my nose, and it wasn't going away. It was 3 weeks there, and it wasn't normal acne either. It was kind of itchy and just dry, and I would think it was getting dried out and gone, and these little bumps would just come up, and I was like, what do I do? I thought that I was using pepper sulf. I think I was like, maybe this is the right thing. I don't know why I didn't think to try it right away. I didn't think until I was 3 weeks in. I'm like, oh, maybe I should use, this is what I mean. I'm still learning.
Pepper sulf is a good one.
yeah, I keep thinking I'm still learning to use it when I need it, you know?
Yes, totally.
But anyway, so I started doing that, and then she messaged me back. She's like, maybe try Russ Talks. Yeah, Russ Talks. And I'm not joking you. So this had been going for 3 weeks. I had started Heifer Solve the night I messaged her. This was like a Sunday night. And the next morning she had messaged me back to try Russ Talks after she'd asked a couple questions. And this is Monday. I started Russ Talks. By Monday night, I was like, I think this is pretty dried up. Like, I don't see any new bumps. Mm-hmm. And by Tuesday, like, it was dry.
Wow.
No more itch, no new bumps.
Yeah.
And this had been 3 weeks. So
I can't even tell you the amount of times I've been amazed by it. Like, we access that kit so frequently, like to the point that some of the remedies that I had been using frequently for me or the kids, I just didn't even put them back in the kit because I'm like, I don't want to take it out of the cupboard. Like, I just need these things accessible. We've seen really, really cool things with it. And one thing that I will say for myself, enough time has passed now that I feel comfortable saying I've seen massive improvement, not total healing, but massive improvement. One thing is I've actually been able to reduce my thyroid medication significantly. And I think I'm due for another reduction in medication right now. So just waiting to hear back from my doctor on that, which is amazing. Like, I'm almost to the very lowest dose you can get of desiccated thyroid. Well, I am. So it's just like, are we going to have to reduce that even further? So that's amazing. And it's been a very long journey. And then the other thing is, and this has been the most life-changing for me, is I've had really bad, and this is like personal. And so if you don't want to hear it, that's fine. But I've had really big issues with my cycle, and it's like endometriosis or PCOS, or maybe even some combo of the two. Haven't received official diagnoses because I'm just not really interested in that. That has been going on for 8 years, and worked with Melissa and another homeopath as well, and tried a few different things. And when we made a switch about 4 months ago, I had almost immediate relief. And I'm saying the pain that I had was like crippling to the point, like I couldn't stand making dinner. Sometimes, like, I would have to bring a chair into the kitchen and sit down. And I would have like mid-cycle spotting for a week to 2 weeks. And it was just awful. Like, it was terrible. And I would say that those symptoms, I was thinking about this like 2 days ago, they've probably improved 95%, which is amazing. Like, the spotting is almost completely gone. The pain, instead of lasting for like 2 weeks, it's lasting a day. And for that day, it's way less. So there's nothing else that has changed in my life that it could be. And so I'm thinking that's what it is. And these are like chronic issues, so they take more time. But with the acute issues, like with me and the kids or Kyle, like sicknesses or infections or injuries, that's like, you see, like with Rita and her skin thing, you see really quick results. So I've been really grateful to have discovered this new way of doing things. Old way of doing things, but new for me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Very old way, but very new to us. Yes.
Hey, this is Troy from Apologetics Canada. Have you ever noticed universities don't wait until students arrive on campus to figure out their basketball or volleyball team? Instead, they're actively engaging long before they come onto campus, and it should be the same when it comes to our faith. Research consistently shows that the transition from high school to university and career is a crucial time for faith development. Those students who are equipped and connected going into university and career are often the ones who emerge with their faith intact and are often the ones who share their faith with others. For this reason, Apologetics Canada and Trinity Western University are excited to introduce the first ever Western Youth Summit, happening May 24th, 2025 on Trinity Western University's Langley campus. What is the Western Youth Summit? Well, it isn't another youth rally. Not that those are bad, but this is about identifying, equipping, and connecting students for life in high school and beyond. We're going to have an amazing group of speakers addressing a wide range of relevant topics. There will also be a session in the morning for parents. Students will be connected with trusted Christian ministries from high school to university. For example, if your son or daughter is heading off to university, we want to introduce them to campus ministries long before they get there to help them transition into Christian community. As well, we want to let them know about various scholarship and award opportunities. Early bird registration ends April 14th. Spots are limited, so head to the website westernyouthsummit.ca and register today. Make sure to follow Apologetics Canada on our socials for more details.
Okay, if you could interview anyone, who would that be?
Who would you pick?
I can't think of anyone. So, I mean, there's tons of people that, like for you, I immediately thought Russell Brand for Cecily.
Oh, yeah. See, I didn't even think of that, but yes.
I immediately thought of that. But for me, like, I feel like there's so many people like that that I would like to interview. I would like to interview Glenn Beck. I think he's really interesting. I just thought of that off the top of my head.
Him sometime.
Because he's somebody you don't ever interview. He's always interviewing other people. And you hear his thoughts a lot. But I think he's interesting just as a person in general. But my grandma is somebody who's been on my list. Like I have 2 living grandmas and it's amazing that I do. But one of my grandmas is 97 and a half. And like just talking to her, like when she moved into her house, like when they got married, they didn't have running water, I'm pretty sure, you know?
Yeah.
And now she texts me like
that's
back
amazing.
when I send her pictures.
That's crazy.
Like,
that's amazing.
You know, to live through that many changes and that much technology shift from like not having water to being able to text someone is crazy. And we don't live exactly in the same place. You know, we live several hours apart. And so getting there and being able to interview, like have a setup has been a challenge, but I really would like to.
Oh, I really hope you do.
That's something I really want to do, even just for our listeners, but also just for me. Like I want to do that.
Yeah. I want you to too, because just the other day, actually, my son was washing a whole bunch of eggs because he had let them accumulate for a couple of days. And he was like, well, I'm washing all these eggs. Can I listen to a podcast or something? I'm like, sure. What do you want to listen to? And just joking. I'm like, Boom Clap Podcast. And he's like, oh, actually, yeah. Can I listen to the one you did with Great Grandma?
Yes.
Because I did one 3 years ago or something, or 4 years ago almost.
It was in September 2021. Yes. You did it when we lost our baby.
Yeah. Yes. It had like Rita had lost her baby, and we had another interview scheduled that was very much a Rita interview. And so we rescheduled that guy, and last minute it was like, who could I interview so that we have something to release? And it was like, oh, my grandma would be wonderful. And so just like last week, my son, while he was washing eggs, was listening to this interview with my grandma, and it's just so sweet. Like her voice, her stories. And like she grew up as a pioneer in Alberta too, before moving to Burnaby, which is a city in BC. So such an interesting life story too. But anyone who's lived, you know, at that time she was 87. Now she's almost 91. But, you know, they've seen so many changes.
I loved listening to that interview.
Yeah.
I loved it. I can still, because I remember like it released, like we hadn't delivered yet or anything. So like I was just kind of killing time, like waiting, you know, it was like such a sad time. But I remember right where I was sitting, like listening to that interview, and she was talking about her loss and things. I
was actually wondering when it released, I'm like, is this going to be too painful for you? No,
it was really good. And like looking back, how she described some things, like it didn't seem real. Like it seemed kind of like a dream, or, you know, like some of the things she said very much resonate. But anyways, I just love her voice.
I know.
Even, you know?
Yeah. I just remember even when I was little, so she was, you know, 30 years younger than she is right now, or at the time of recording. And she would like read us books. She had this one book that she read us called The Best Loved Doll. And just the way she read it was so peaceful and sweet. She has a great voice. So if you haven't listened to that one, guys, you should go back and listen to it. But it's just fresh motivation for us to get one done with Rita's grandma, because it's really cool. Like,
and so back to the question, if you could interview anyone, who would it be? Like, I really like listening to elderly people tell their stories. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like this world we live in, like there's so many people talking that really lack wisdom. Not that every elderly person has wisdom. That is not necessarily true. But they have lived, you know, and sometimes even if they don't have a lot of wisdom, there is wisdom to be gained from hearing their story.
Absolutely.
And it really makes me sad, like losing this generation that saw things, you know, that those stories can't be heard firsthand anymore. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I love that. I love this question because I feel like something we've talked about often is that, you know, the movers and shakers of the world are actually the ones who don't necessarily make it into the history books. They're the ones that are quietly raising their families and working hard or going to war or, you know, like, I don't know. It's good.
Hey, what do you each enjoy most about the podcast? Interviews, deep dives, personal testimony? Oh, I think this is like, what do you enjoy most about the podcast? And then do you enjoy interviews, deep dives, personal testimonials most? I think that's what she means.
Yeah. Like, is it one of those things? She's like saying, could it be one of these things or is it something else? Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a combination of everything. I really love like some of the people we've gotten to meet and interview and just their really interesting stories. But also like, I really enjoy a fun episode where we just are chatting and laughing. But some of my favorite episodes also are when we've like done an essay review.
Me too.
And I don't know if there are listeners' favorites or not. I'm not sure. But like for me, I feel like I've really had to think and search myself and my understanding of like what I'm reading. And I enjoy that because it's a challenge for me.
Yeah. I've always wondered how those come across for our audience because it's hard. Like we don't have time to read the whole essay, right? And so it's like
on air.
Yes. And so it's like, are they catching what's going on? But I love it so much. And just the other day we were talking with Steve Kim and he mentioned an essay. Did you have the immediate thought that I did? It's like, oh, maybe this could be one that we can talk about.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, I love those ones. That's the cool thing about the podcast. I can tell you, I was going to make a joke and say my favorite thing about the podcast is the scheduling and the technology and the admin stuff, because that's literally the worst part about it. But I don't think I could even pick a favorite thing so just the other day, we recorded an episode, just the two of us. And it was so fun. Like, and then listening back to it later, I'm like, that was funny. Like it was a serious episode. And so we talked about serious
and your maple syrup.
Yeah. But it was funny. And I was like, that was really fun. And then there's other times where it's like, you know, I just had Shanda. I spoke with Shanda and that interview. Oh yeah, you guys will have heard it already because I think it came out February 19 or something. But it was more serious. And I loved talking with her because she's a friend of mine, but it was like a serious episode. And then, I don't know, I love the variety of it, I guess. Like
very rarely do we get done recording and be like, if ever.
Yeah.
Like
I'd say a couple times where it wasn't necessarily like the content was bad, but it was like something was off, like between us and the guests or... You know, there's been moments like that just a couple times, but usually it's a really positive experience. Yeah.
What do your husbands think of your social media and podcast? Is it weird being well-known online?
I would say my husband, he doesn't really talk about it too often. Like I think he's happy that I do it and he's super supportive of it. And he wears our Boom Clap podcast sweatshirt really proudly, which I'm so thankful for. He's wearing it all the time. But it's not like it's not like a big topic of conversation. It is what it is. Like, it's just part of our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just like he goes to school and I ask, how was your day? And, you know, I finish recording. He's like, how was the episode? You know, but he actually doesn't listen to it, much to my chagrin. But that's fine. He doesn't listen to any podcast. So, but he's very supportive. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say similar for Levi, like super supportive. But no, he doesn't listen to it. Like you're in the tractor or you're in the semi, but he just doesn't listen to podcasts. He listens to talk radio. And I'm like, it's the same thing, but I don't think he's ever opened the podcast app on his phone. So, but he has listened to some of them, like if we're in the car together and like we've had a really interesting episode that I think would be good for like us to talk through like the content. Yes. Like he enjoys it when he does listen.
Yeah, same with Kyle.
But part of it, like, I don't even care for him to listen. Like, I don't really enjoy people I know listening to it. Like when somebody I know says, I listen to your podcast, I'm like, I am so bad at taking a compliment. Not because I'm not grateful, but because I don't feel like I ever deserve the compliment. I'm
I know.
Oh, you listen, great. Like, now you hear how dumb I sound, or like that's what goes through my head. And I know that I shouldn't be that way, but
it's part of being a human, right? It's like,
yes,
it's part of being a human. And I think I worry that the day you lose that is the day you've lost all humility. But like for me, what I usually do when I'm uploading the podcast to Google Drive for our editor is I have to have a video running in the background in order to keep it going. I'm sure there's a setting on my computer that I could, but I've tried everything and I don't know how. So I just keep a video going of our podcast so that it keeps uploading. And I have to mute it because I'm like, I can't listen to myself or
own voice anymore.
Yeah. Especially if like my kids or my husband are around. I'm like, I feel like I need to apologize. I'm like, I'm really sorry about that. Like mute, which
there's something very awkward about hearing yourself and watching other people hear yourself.
Oh yeah.
But back to Levi though, like I think he's always used to me doing something. Like I'm always somebody thinking about something, doing something. And I've often said that like, sometimes I wish I was different. Like I've even said to myself, I wish God didn't make me this way. And then it hits me that God did make me this way. Like I am made this way. And so anyway, I think he's just used to me being this type of person and it's fine. It's good. And he's very supportive of it. Yeah. I'm very thankful because I know like he's very busy and he's a really hard worker. But he does like help when he can. Like if he can come home for a half hour, or something and like help out with the kids. Like if we have a podcast to record, like he will do that. And there's most of the time he can't do that, but there are times a year, like right now in the winter where he can. Yeah. And I really appreciate that about him.
Totally. And especially when you think about like just monetarily, like our husbands, their time is worth more than our time. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so for them to support us in that way, to say, I'm going to take a half hour, which pays more for me than it does for you, to come and help you so that you can do this. Like it is a really awesome thing.
Yeah, it is.
That's love.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
How did your friendship form from social media? This is the last question. And did you know each other before Instagram? No, we did not. We met on Instagram, which is so weird for me to say. And I'm sure for you, Cecily, it is too, because like, we're not that type of people to just like make friends on Instagram. No. But so I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Cecily, but I think that we did one of those things like back in the day, 6-7 years ago, there were these things that people would do, had blogs where like you went into this group and like everybody followed each other.
Maybe that is what I don't remember.
Like there would be like 50 bloggers and like you all followed each other back. And I never did one of those. I thought they were silly. I'm like, why would you just all want to follow these bloggers? And it was like this blogging thing. And I also feel like I have done this to a fault, like not participated in giveaways when I've been asked. Now these people that invited me to giveaways have like 300,000 followers and I could have helped grow the podcast probably through that. But I've always felt very a tight connection to like growing my following in a very organic way and like making sure the people that were there actually wanted to be, and I didn't like buy followers in any kind of way, whether it is just from anyway, this is just my personality. So it was not like me to do one of those follow things, but for some reason I did that. And you are one of the people, I'm pretty sure this is what happened, right?
I don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure. You're probably
I'm gonna
right.
trust my memory on this. Back to like this question. Yeah. But I did that and you were one of the people I followed. And then like Missy Linkletter, she was one of the people, like I met like 2 or 3 of the best people that I love connecting with on social media through that. But anyways, we just connected. Yeah. And then we started talking about wellness and health. And then we started this little like wellness community thing. Which
oh my goodness. What a journey. We didn't continue on with. And then 2020
2020 happened and people are like, start a podcast. And Cecily's like, I think we should start a podcast. And we started a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very odd. Like your story is probably true. And if that is what we did, that's probably the only
like
one of those things I ever did too. Yeah.
Sorry, Cecily, what?
No, I was going to say, if we did that, which we probably did, because like we said, your memory is better than mine. That's probably the only one of those things that I ever did too. So that is really interesting.
I know that's the only time I ever did that.
Yeah. That is interesting. And I've not made any other friends on Instagram. Like there's people we've had on our podcast who I've gotten to know by podcasting with them. And then I will kind of like engage with them on Instagram a little bit because I'm just not that way.
Like you don't feel like you have other friends, quote friends that you made on Instagram
that haven't been on the podcast? I don't think so.
Oh man. See, this is also how we're different. Like I don't have people that I'm on Instagram that I talk to every day like you, but like I feel like I've made, like, I am literally telling Levi all the time, like, I'll tell him, like, so-and-so, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, she's some lady that, like, we follow each other, we're friends on Instagram. Like, I always feel so dumb saying it.
No, you shouldn't.
I feel so stupid.
It's part of what makes you special. But I think, like, I have listeners that I'll message with on Instagram, like podcast listeners that will message me and then I'll message them back. And, like, people that I know personally. And then other than that, it's not like I've connected with anyone who's like, oh, I follow you and you follow me and we're getting to know each other. No, it's like once I've gotten to know them by talking with them on the podcast or in some other capacity, then we start talking back and forth on Instagram. But you know what? Like, again, I don't have a great memory for things. And there's probably maybe even someone listening who's like, that's not true because we're friends on Instagram and we message and I haven't been on the podcast. So that's very possible that I'm just not able to think of someone right now.
Oh, man.
It's possible. Now I feel bad.
I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just saying,
you're not.
like,
it's me making myself feel bad.
We're just different in that way too. Yeah. Like I don't know.
You thrive off those connections.
I call a lot of people friends that wouldn't call me. Maybe I just think a lot of people are my friend.
And they probably are, Rita, because I'm more the opposite way where it's like, I wouldn't dare call someone my friend unless I knew for sure we were friends. Also like with like shortening their name or something.
How do you know for sure? Do you like make it official? Like, pinky swear.
You want to go out with me?
Just joking.
But I don't know. I just have to feel really certain. And then also like with like someone's name, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a girl's name that I would shorten. Like say someone's name is, can't think of a name off the top of my head, but like a longer name. What?
Jessica.
My sister's name is Jessica. I should have thought of this. But say someone's name is Jessica. I would not feel comfortable like calling them Jess until we had like are you okay with that? Am I a close enough person to you? Like I always, for some reason, and this has got to be some sort of mental problem that I have. We all have our issues, right? But I also just never assume someone would want me to come and talk to them or, you know, like.
Oh, I do that. Like, I never think anyone wants, like,
I'm like, I wouldn't want to come and interrupt what you're doing. You don't want me around. Like,
I assume I'm the most annoying person in the world to everyone.
Me too. So much brokenness. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
This is what people call, what is it? Generational trauma, which I would say is generational sin that has somehow infiltrated our lives.
Probably.
Anyway. Yeah.
Either our listeners are relating right now or they're feeling really sad for us.
I can't believe we listen to a podcast with these people.
Oh, man. Anyway, so that's all the questions. Yeah?
Yeah. The only other one I got was from you. How have we managed to keep this going for 4 years? And I would say each other, teamwork.
Like we said on the very first question when we talked about what have we learned about each other? And then we kind of talked about our differences. It's the only way. It took both of us. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And others. It took both of us.
And finally relinquishing a few responsibilities.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, guys, thanks for listening. 4 years. Those of you who have been with us from the start, man, thank you.
Yeah, there's almost names that I want to name, but I can't because, you'd forget someone or someone would feel left out. But there's some of you very long time key listeners, key supporters who were just, again, here's the self-worth issues, but I just feel like we don't deserve your support in the way that you give it to us. And we will never not be thankful for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, guys, if you want to find us outside the podcast, you can find us at Boom Clap Podcast on Instagram. You can find me, Rita, at ritarogersco.com or Rita Rogers Co on Instagram.
And you can find me on Instagram at cecily.dickey or my website, thegracetogrow.com. Thanks for listening.